welcome to the MAM Journals. Some of you may recall that I had a BMW M1000R and I really liked the bike, but I found that I wasn't actually riding it as much as I thought I would, and partially because I think nowadays, although I do enjoy the occasional wobble around on a slow track day, I do about 4 or 5 a year, on the road I'm enjoying a more upright riding position. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you my initial impressions of this, the M1000R, the bike that I bought to replace it. And I'll be going through the technical specifications. There's quite a lot of that. I'll be talking about aesthetics and finish. We'll go for a little wobble round out on the roads with a GoPro, and then we'll be coming back here and I'll be giving you my first impressions, final comments and conclusions. I do hope that you enjoy the video. These hyper-nakeds, as they're referred to, are increasingly popular, and certainly I see more of them in the motorcycle cafes that I go to than I've seen in the past. There are various models available, of course, not just BMW, and I do mention a couple of those, indeed the ones that I looked at when I made the decision to buy this, in the GoPro footage. Now, the bike itself is obviously got the enormous power, performance, braking and handling of a sports bike, but I think what's making them increasingly popular is this standard upright riding position, possibly related to demographics. Engine wise, the bike is fitted actually with the same engine that's fitted into one of the RR versions, the sports bike versions, which is indeed with that same level of power what makes it the hyper. And it's a 999cc, it's liquid cooled, it's a transverse 4, it produces 208 brake horsepower of power at 13,750 revs. If you're thinking torque, 83 foot-pounds of torque, or if you're thinking old money, 113 newton meters of that. It's got fly-by-wire throttle, it's got variable intake, it's got 48mm throttle bodies, and all of that is incorporated within a bike that weighs 199 kilos. You just look at the spec of this bike and you know it's going to be fast. The bike's actually got slightly lower gearing than the RR, and that's both at the rear sprocket and internally. I think third, fourth, or fourth, fifth and sixth are different, but anyway they are slightly different ratios, and as a result of that it's obviously got great acceleration, but it doesn't have the outright speed performance of the RR versions, which are 200 plus. This will do a mere 170 something, depending on sort of conditions and rider weight, I guess. I've certainly seen tests of them at 173. To control all that power, they describe it as a self-reinforcing multi-plate anti-hopping oil batch clutch, mechanically operated. Individually, I know the meaning of those words, but collectively, not a clue. But certainly when you ride the bike, it's not a heavy clutch, and it certainly copes with the power very well. But again, perhaps more on that when we go for a ride. The whole gearbox is assisted by this quick shifter. The BMW don't call it that, but it works well with the gearbox, and I had no challenges at all getting it in and out. You might see there's a slightly unusually on this one. You can see that you can reverse the positioning by moving it to that, and that is for racetrack use, for those people that instead of wanting 1 down and 5 up, they can go they can literally reverse it, which again gives you an indication as to the intent and purposes and capabilities of a bike like this. Indeed, there's a whole chapter in the handbook which is about setting it up for track, so lots of permutations in there. Now clearly the bike needs a proper chassis and suspension in order to cope with this level of power. This has got what is called a I get slightly confused with the different chassis that they do describe them, but this is a cast aluminium twin spar frame, and You can see on the screen now there's a photo of that sort of naked on its own, and the engine is sort of hanging from it, self-supporting is a phrase I've read somewhere on it. I sort of lost the will to live when they started talking about monocoques and chassis on bikes, and they didn't look anything like monocoques as I understood them. But clearly it works very well, and they've developed it over many years. On the front here you've got these 45mm front forks. It's got semi-active damping in it and a mechanical preload which you can adjust on the top. And you've also got, around on this side, you can see it here, this is the other end of it, but you've got adjustment on the other side. This is a steering damper with a knob on this side, and I suspect it's like most things that we faff about with, it's righty-tighty and lefty-loosey. But I check the manual before I start doing it. I haven't adjusted it out, I've just ridden it as it is. The front brakes, I like these brake units, obviously very M style in terms of the colour and the branding. I think they might be Nissans, but correct me if I'm wrong, I won't be offended. And it's got 2 times 320mm discs, and it's got the 4 pots on it, and obviously radials, as you can see. At the rear, it's a monoshock in here, and that's obviously semi-active damping, again mechanical preload, and the brakes on the back are 220mm disc with a 1-pot caliper. The bike itself, in terms of its dimensions, is it's the wheelbase. I annoy some people, so apologies to them where you think, oh, I don't want to know that level of detail, but I like to give the specs on the bike. The wheelbase there, contact point to contact, is a very short 1455, which is really sports bike plus dimensions, and it's got the rake at the front, it's 24.2 degrees. So with those sort of dimensions, you know, again, just looking at the spec sheet, this bike will turn. And indeed, again, it does. Wheels wise, it's got 17-inch front and rear. It's got 120/70s on the front there, and it's got 255s on the back. As you can see, I'm still got a bit to learn here. I don't think I've ever used all of a 200. I can do better with a 180 and a 190, but you could probably land a light aircraft on the size of those strips. But work in progress. I will get there. The wheels themselves, they're forged aluminium. You do have a carbon option on this bike. I think they call it, I'm going from memory now, M competition package or something like that. But nicely set up. In terms of seat height, this is quite interesting, and that's an 840mm seat. And when I look at specs, I look at 840 and think that'd be too tall for me. But it's a good example, this bike, of how don't be always misled just by the one measurement, because it's about how wide the seat is and where your feet come down as to whether you can get contact. 840mm is 33 inches, and I've got a 29 and a bit inside leg measurement. But I actually, after I initially wobbled out of trying the demonstrator at North Oxford Garage, I thought, oh, this is a bit tall, but very quickly I found it's fine. So as I say, a very good example of don't be just put off by sheer measurements. If you get a chance, go and sit on a bike and preferably ride it, and it will give you a feel as to whether it fits. Okay, so looking at some of the technology on it, I'm not going to go through all of it because we will be here for days if I did, but as you'd expect on a bike like this, there is huge amounts of electronic adjustability going on. And I'm just going to just show you some basic things through it. If you go to the mode button here, you can set various modes on it. Starting at road, there is a rain mode in there, but I've sort of ignored that really, probably overconfident. Dynamic and race is what I've put in there, but you can actually change the options on that. I'll show you how to do that. If you go to the menu over here, you press this button, drop it down into menu, and you can see that that's gone straight to settings where I last was. Again, pressing it down, and then I can go to vehicle settings, cursor across, driving mode, pre-selection, and you can pick a certain number that you want. So as I say, I've taken out the rain and I've gone for road, dynamic, race and race pro 1, and which means that you can actually infinitely set the various levels of engine braking, suspension and power delivery to suit what you're doing on the track. More for a track than on the road, but I'm sure some people will end up putting their preferred settings in for the road, because you can actually individualize it. I'm just going to go back a bit and show you some of the information that's available. Sport's a good one to look at. You can see that it's got various screens that you can use in a different way, showing you braking readings, traction control, intervention and how it's coming on. Again, I can move that on. You've got your lap timer and a different display there showing you information in a different way. So what I'm really saying, I say, it's a huge amount of adjustability and flexibility on this bike to set it up exactly how you want it. And indeed, if you're going to track day and it's wet in the morning and it's dry in the afternoon, you'd probably be as well advised to adjust the settings accordingly. But a phenomenal bit of technology and easy to use once you actually get your head around it. The bike has obviously got a 6-axis IMU, as you'd expect, inertial measurement unit, pitch roll in yaw for those of you that are into such things, and as well as this sort of, as you'd expect, level of traction control, it's got additional feature where you can actually set it up so it allows you to drift the bike. Not something I'll be trying anytime soon. People sometimes say to me, well, I don't like all this technology on the bike, it interferes. What I would say to you is, well, turn it all off and see how you get on. I did actually make a fool of myself yet again at Donington in a slow group, and I rode my 1000RR, and I made the mistake of turning everything all off, and I got to the top. If anybody knows the circuit, I got to the top of the Craner curves, opened the throttle, it span the rear wheel and pulled into a wheelie. So I wobbled slowly back into the pits and asked the guys if they could turn it all back on again. They said, what, all? I said, yes, all. I am not capable of riding a bike of 200 brake horsepower without technology, and I think sometimes it's the only thing between me and the ambulance. I'm a big fan. Aesthetics and finish. They first began these sort of M options, I think in 2018, when you could get sort of packs, which were M packs. The first, obviously, M bike was the M1000RR. So this is the second M bike, and in the Hyper Naked. This one is in the motorsport colours, as they're called, and I actually prefer this white to the darker blue one, which is the competition package one. For me, it's just part of sort of BMW history and heritage. When I see these colours, I do think motorsport. I'd probably be back to, I think it was 1973 when the Batmobile was raced, the 3-litre CSL, something like that. I remember seeing it like those. I was obviously a mere youth in those days, and certainly wasn't riding or driving, but it did catch my eye. Probably one of the posters I had on my wall, and along, of course, with my main interest, a Kawasaki Z1, same year. The bike's fitted with a liberal sprinkling of M logos. To my eye, this is, and I do overuse the word, I think the bike looks really purposeful. It's not beautiful to how I look at it, but I think it's very striking. I like the eye-catching, the calipers. I love the details on the levers here. Nice little extra touch. Quite what you're supposed to do with that, I don't know, but I do like it. And I like the titanium silencer. You can of course get titanium headers, on which saves 2 kilos, but anybody who's seen me on the video will know that if I wanted to lose 2 kilos, there might be easier ways than spending a fortune on headers. These wheels, when I saw them in this sort of matte black, I was a bit I've got a GS 1250 which has got matte black wheels on, and I've got to say it's a career keeping them clean, and so I saw these a bit nervous that I wonder if they'll keep like they do, but they actually keep really well, and they've just literally been wiped over with a cloth and come up to the original finish, so I'm actually very pleased with those. I love this milled handlebar clamp up here. I just think, again, with a nice logo on, and I just think the whole appearance of the bike just oozes performance. It looks like it's doing 170 something miles an hour stood still, and that's great. And certainly the interest that I've seen it when I park it up in car parks suggests that others like it too. So anyway, let's go for a slow wobble out, and I'll try and show you some of its capabilities. We all know that the 200 brake horsepower Super Naked will be fast, although quite how fast is unlikely and probably unwise to be demonstrated on open roads and a public YouTube channel. If we know it's fast, is it actually rideable in the real world? This is Chipping Norton in the Cotswolds, and I am riding at legal speeds in 2nd or 3rd gear in road mode, the calmest of the options. It is perfectly civilised and indeed muted enough not to attract the attention of those less keen on motorbikes than we are. The clutch is quite heavy, but not excessively so. Would I want to ride it through a big city on a regular basis? Probably not, but I can't imagine many faced with that sort of journey on a daily basis would choose any of the bikes in this category. On ordinary roads and riding, it remains, if not docile, then certainly patient, ready to quickly and safely overtake when asked. I recognised fairly early on that unlike some of my other bikes, on the M, if you can see a gap, you are going to make it. When deciding to buy this bike, I actively considered various options and then narrowed it down to 3. The Ducati V4S Street Fighter, the Aprilia V4 Factory, and this one. Thanks to On Your Bike near Aylesbury, I got to ride the first 2 back to back. The Ducati is a fantastic full-on machine with, as they say, never a dull moment. It certainly wouldn't have tolerated this gentle cruise into Chipping Camden, where I am on my way to the excellent Coachy Cafe. The Ducati would have been banging, popping and grumbling throughout. It is a bike that demands to be ridden fast and expects you to do so. Exciting, but for me just too full on, and a bike I don't think I'd be taking out for a normal ride with the occasional lively section to make it interesting. Interestingly, I found the Aprilia, well regarded by many I know that can ride bikes far better than I, a little too restrained, especially in tall and lower, more normal revs. Lively of course in more sporty modes and with fine handling, I found the sometimes uncooperative gearbox a little underwhelming. They are of course both great bikes, but a ride on North Oxford's BMW's Demonstrator M for several hours convinced me that, for what I'm looking for, I could actually have my cake and eat it. Moving to slightly brisker roads, I know this one and the junctions onto it very well, the bike begins to demonstrate its effortless capabilities. It covers ground at this restrained pace in its sleep. You are, of course, exposed to wind on bikes like this, but provided you make reasonable progress, the forward-leaning riding position and wide bars work with the wind to make it surprisingly comfortable. I had thought it would be a bike that I would take for a 100-mile run, but I've actually done 150-mile loops on it and found it fine. The modes do of course change the suspension settings as well as engine power delivery and braking. Engine braking, that is, not calipers. Always, and as you would expect, it's sports bike firm. It can also go to what I call Silverstone solid. So therefore my comments on comfort should be taken as a comparative rather than a definitive statement. Race Pro mode will of course take the fillings out, but you'll probably be laughing too much to worry about it. I do like the lower gear ratios, and the Gear Shift System Pro works well as long as you remember to allow the lever to return to its neutral position before asking for another one. It does have an adjustable shift light indicator for those that like visual aids. As discussed in the walk around, the bike is fitted with cruise control, but although I regularly use such systems when touring to prevent my speed from inadvertently creeping up, I haven't used it on this bike. It just doesn't feel like that sort of a bike. I do, however, like the heated grips, increasingly useful in what we now call the British summer. Despite its technology, the bike is mechanically noisy and you do experience significant vibration through the handlebars. The latter an observation of several riders and owners in the group forums. It is early days for me, and currently I view it as part of the larger-than-life character of the bike. Whether I still feel like this in 2,000 to 3,000 miles remains to be seen, but if you're looking for a silky smooth ride, other choices are far more obvious. This is a rugged, vigorous powerhouse of a bike, and it rides, sounds and looks like one. I regularly ride this uphill dual carriageway, and at these relatively sensible speeds, it's not actually as fast as the camera mountings suggest. Most bikes they can do this at these sort of levels. What strikes me is the absolute ease with which the M achieves it. Legal constraints removed, it would probably get far more interesting adding another 50 miles an hour. Probably best saved for a race circuit near you. The M1000R is an exceptionally fast and fine handling bike, and far more capable than any YouTube video can hope to capture on public roads. So what are my initial conclusions on this M1000R? Well, I think the first thing I'd say is, can I ride a 208 brake horsepower bike properly? Of course I can't. There's not many in the world that can. And those, in my experience, those that can actually ride them properly very rarely talk about it. They're a different breed. But it doesn't mean that we can't enjoy the sheer level of performance up to our own limits when riding the bike. This bike is very rideable, but becomes absolutely exhilarating with the press of a mode button and a sniff of throttle. It rides like a scolded cat. Now, all of my bikes make me smile. This bike has proved slightly special in that it does actually make me laugh. Now, clearly I've got a lot to learn about the bike, and I'll be putting more miles on it. Indeed, one of the reasons I bought the bike is I hope I will do more miles on than I did on my 1000RR, and I'm looking forward to putting some mileage in and, as I say, learning about it. I'll come back to you next year and let you know how I've got on. But in the meanwhile, I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, you might be kind enough to press like, or even if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. But most importantly, as always, ride safe, stay well.